The story begins with a young person who always felt there was something missing in their everyday life. Days would pass by in a blur of work, chores, and routines, leaving a quiet emptiness that they could not explain. There was a longing for something deeper, something that could touch the heart and bring a sense of calm and wonder. They had always enjoyed music, but most of what they listened to was modern and fast-paced, never quite filling the space in their mind that needed quiet and reflection. One quiet afternoon, feeling unusually restless, the young person decided to take a walk through the small streets of their town. The sun was warm but gentle, casting soft shadows on the walls and paving stones. As they walked, the sounds of the town surrounded them: distant chatter, the rustle of leaves in the wind, a soft bird song somewhere high in a tree. The combination of these small sounds was pleasant, but still, there was a feeling that something was missing. They wanted music that could make time slow down, music that could speak to the soul rather than just entertain the mind. While wandering, they stumbled upon an old music store tucked between two buildings. It was the kind of shop that seemed untouched by time, with wooden shelves stacked high with records and CDs, and posters of famous musicians decorating the walls. Curiosity pulled them inside. Yet the air smelled faintly of polished wood and old paper, a scent that felt comforting and familiar. As they stepped further in, their eyes were drawn to a section labeled classical music. It was a collection of CDs and records, carefully arranged, each promising a journey into a world of sound unlike anything they had experienced before. They picked up the first CD, a collection of timeless masterpieces. The cover was simple, with an elegant painting of a serene landscape, mountains in the background, and a calm river flowing through the center. Something about the simplicity of it called to them. They bought the CD without hesitation, feeling an unexpected excitement. They could not explain why, but they felt certain this music would bring the calm and depth they had been seeking. When they got home, they placed the CD into the player and pressed play. The first notes of a piano filled the room, soft and gentle. It was as if the music itself was breathing, alive with emotion and meaning. At first, they just sat quietly listening. The world outside seemed to fade away. Each note was precise, yet full of warmth, carrying a beauty that was almost tangible. Time seemed to stretch, and the worries and noise of everyday life fell away. It felt like discovering a secret place that had always existed but was hidden from view. The music carried them through different emotions and scenes. There were moments of quiet reflection, moments of joy, and moments of longing. Each composition told a story without words, speaking directly to the heart. They felt tears welling up unexpectedly, not out of sadness, but because the music touched something deep within. It was as if someone had poured all their life's feelings into sound, creating a bridge between their emotions and the world. Over the next few days, they listened to the CD repeatedly. Each time they noticed something new, a particular chord that made them feel peaceful, a melody that reminded them of a long-forgotten memory, a rhythm that seemed to echo their own heartbeat. Music that had seemed distant and formal before now felt intimate and personal. It was no longer just a collection of notes. It was a companion, a guide, and a source of comfort. The young person began to seek more classical music. Libraries watched videos and read articles about famous composers and their works. They learned about the lives of Beethoven, Mozart, Chopin, and Debussy. Each composer had a unique story, struggles and triumphs, and understanding their journeys made the music even more meaningful. It was no longer just sound. It was the voice of human experience, passed down through time. They started incorporating classical music into their daily life. Morning walks became a ritual, accompanied by gentle melodies, setting a peaceful tone for the day. Evenings were reserved for slow, reflective pieces, providing a soft landing after the hustle of work and obligations. Music was no longer background noise. It had become the centerpiece of their life, shaping moods, thoughts, and feelings. Friends and family noticed a change as well. The young person seemed calmer, more present, and more thoughtful, carrying an inner peace that was contagious. One day, while listening to a particularly moving piece by Chopin, they realized that this music had done more than just provide enjoyment. It had opened a door to self-discovery. They understood that life did not need to be rushed, that quiet moments could hold deep meaning, and that art had the power to heal and inspire. Classical music had become a teacher, guiding them gently toward a richer, fuller experience of life. Inspired by this realization, they began sharing the music with others. Friends who had never paid much attention to classical compositions found themselves captivated. The young person would explain the emotions behind each piece, the history of the composer, and the small details in the music that made it unique. Slowly, they noticed that others also began seeking these moments of calm and reflection, curious about the timeless masterpieces that had so profoundly affected one person's life. As they continued this journey, the young person also started to reflect on the idea of collection. They wanted to create a set of music that could offer peace and comfort to anyone who listened. Each piece would be chosen with care, representing different moods, emotions, and experiences. It was not just about popularity or fame. It was about the power of music to touch hearts and provide a safe, calming space. The young person's home slowly transformed into a sanctuary of sound. Shelves were filled with CDs and records, carefully organized by composer, mood, and era. They experimented with different listening environments, soft lighting, comfortable chairs, and even the natural sounds of the nearby river or garden blended into the experience. Music became an immersive, multi-sensory journey, a personal retreat from the stress and noise of modern life. This first part of their journey, the discovery of classical music, was just the beginning. It opened a path that would lead to deeper understanding, personal growth, and a lifelong love for timeless masterpieces. The young person felt a profound gratitude for that day when they walked into the old music store, for the chance encounter that had changed the course of their life. In music, they had found a friend, a teacher, and a mirror to their own soul. By the end of these first months, they had begun to see the world differently. The quiet rustle of leaves, the soft hum of the wind, and even the distant city noises were now parts of a larger symphony. Life itself had become more vibrant, more meaningful, and more harmonious. They knew that this was only the first step, but it was a step that would forever shape the way they experienced the world. Classical music was no longer a distant art form. It was an essential part of their life, a companion in the journey of living fully, feeling deeply, and appreciating the beauty in every moment. After the young person's first experience with classical music, they became determined to explore more deeply. Each day, they set aside time to listen carefully, not just casually, but with the intent to understand the emotions and stories behind every piece. Their mornings began with gentle piano compositions that carried a soft lightness, almost like the sun rising over a calm lake. The soft melodies helped them focus and begin the day with a sense of peace and clarity. During the afternoons, when the world seemed noisy and busy, they would retreat to a quiet corner of their home with headphones on. Here, they would listen to more complex compositions, pieces with many layers and instruments. The harmonies of violins, cellos, and pianos created a rich tapestry of sound that felt alive. They started noticing patterns and motifs within the music, the way certain themes would repeat, change, and evolve. It was fascinating to see how music could tell a story without a single word being spoken. They began reading about the lives of composers, discovering the struggles and triumphs behind each masterpiece. Beethoven, for example, faced immense challenges, including losing his hearing, yet created music that expressed profound joy, sorrow, and resilience. Understanding his life gave the music new meaning, making every note feel personal and human. Mozart's playful and intricate compositions revealed a mind full of curiosity and joy, while Chopin's piano pieces conveyed deep emotion and vulnerability. Each composer had a unique voice, and learning about them made the music feel even more alive. The young person also started noticing the impact of music on their daily life. Moments that used to feel stressful or overwhelming were softened by the melodies that now accompanied them. A long walk through the park became more than exercise. It became a meditative experience with the birdsong blending seamlessly with Vivaldi's harmonies. Even chores that once felt tedious now seemed lighter, accompanied by music that matched the rhythm of their movements. They began to feel a growing connection to the world, noticing beauty in simple moments that had previously gone unnoticed. Curiosity led them to attend live performances. The first time they heard a full orchestra perform in a concert hall, they were overwhelmed by the richness and depth of sound. Every instrument added its own character to the composition, and the skill of the musicians brought the music to life in a way recordings never could. Watching the conductor guide the orchestra with subtle gestures, seeing the musicians' dedication and emotion, deepened their respect for the art. The experience was not just entertaining, it was transformative, leaving a lasting impression that words could not fully describe. They began to share their newfound passion with others. Conversations with friends and family turned to discussions about music, composers, and favorite pieces. They would describe the emotional journey a particular composition took them on, encouraging those around them to listen with attention and openness. Some friends were hesitant at first, unfamiliar with classical music, but slowly they began to see the beauty and depth in the melodies. These shared experiences created bonds, bringing people together in appreciation of something timeless and profound. As their understanding grew, the young person began organizing their own collection of music. This was no longer just about enjoying sound. It became a personal project of curation. They would spend hours selecting pieces that evoked different emotions: peace, reflection, joy, or nostalgia. Each choice was intentional. It's aimed at creating a collection that could transport the listener to a place of calm and introspection. They experimented with different recordings and interpretations, discovering how subtle variations in tempo, dynamics, or phrasing could completely change the feeling of a piece. Music began to influence other areas of life as well. Writing, drawing, and even casual conversations were colored by the emotions they absorbed from the compositions. Creativity flowed more freely, and they found themselves solving problems with patience and clarity. The lessons learned from music: attention to detail, appreciation of nuance, and the balance between complexity and simplicity spilled over into everything they did. Life felt more harmonious, not because problems disappeared, but because they now had tools to approach them with calm and focus. They also began keeping a journal, not just of thoughts, but of musical experiences. Every piece they listened to was noted with reflections on how it made them feel, images it inspired, or memories it awakened. Over time, the journal became a personal map of emotional growth and understanding. It's a record of how music shaped their inner world. Revisiting these notes brought back memories of specific moments, almost like reliving the journey itself. The young person realized that music was not just entertainment, it was a companion, a mirror reflecting their thoughts and feelings, helping them understand themselves more deeply. One afternoon, while listening to a particularly moving nocturne, they had a sudden insight. Music, they realized, was a language that transcended words and time. It connected people across generations, cultures, and experiences. A melody composed hundreds of years ago could still evoke tears or smiles in someone today. This timeless quality fascinated them, inspiring a desire to explore compositions beyond the most famous works. They began searching for lesser-known pieces, discovering hidden gems that were just as powerful and moving. Each new discovery felt like finding a secret treasure, adding richness and depth to their growing collection. The young person also experimented with creating their own listening experiences. They combined pieces and sequences that told a story or evoked specific moods. A morning playlist might begin with soft, awakening melodies, progress into joyful, energetic compositions, and end with reflective, calming pieces. An evening sequence might start with thoughtful piano works, move through gentle string arrangements, and conclude with quiet, contemplative music that prepared the mind for rest. This process of designing experiences deepened their understanding of music's emotional power and its ability to shape perception and feeling. Through this journey, they noticed changes in how they related to others. Patience, empathy, and presence grew naturally, influenced by the slow, thoughtful rhythms of the music they loved. Conflicts were approached with calm, and moments of tension were eased with quiet reflection. Even casual conversations were enriched with references to music, shared feelings, and mutual understanding. The young person realized that music had taught them more than how to appreciate beauty. It had taught them how to live more thoughtfully and fully. They also explored the cultural and historical context of the compositions. Learning about the times in which Beethoven, Chopin, Debussy lived gave insight into the emotions and ideas expressed in their music. Struggles with personal hardship, political turmoil, or social change became part of the story behind the notes. Understanding these contexts made the music resonate more deeply, creating a sense of connection not only to the composers, but to the broader human experience across time. The young person felt part of a larger story, a continuous chain of emotion, creativity, reflection stretching across centuries. This growing awareness inspired them to share their experiences more broadly. They wrote reflections online, discussed music in community groups, and even guided friends through listening sessions. People responded positively, sharing how the music had touched them, calmed them, or helped them reflect. The young person realized that the joy they had found was not meant to be kept alone. It could be shared, multiplied, and appreciated by others. This sense of purpose gave their exploration of classical music an added dimension. Turning personal passion into communal joy, every day brought new discoveries. From subtle variations in familiar pieces to entirely new compositions that challenged and delighted. The young person developed a keen ear, noticing phrasing, tempo changes, and emotional subtleties that even casual listeners might miss. This attention to detail brought a sense of intimacy to each listening session, a feeling that the music was speaking directly to them. Over time, listening to classical music became a form of meditation, a ritual of presence and awareness that enriched every moment. They also began thinking about the future. The idea of creating a curated collection of timeless pieces grew into a larger vision. It was not enough to simply enjoy the music themselves. They wanted to design a collection that could bring the same sense of calm, reflection, and inspiration to others. The thought of creating something lasting, something that could be experienced by anyone, anywhere, at any time, became a motivating force. This project would require dedication, taste, and understanding. But the young person was eager to pursue it. Driven by the joy and fulfillment music had already brought into their life, as months passed, classical music became inseparable from their daily life. Each morning, afternoon, and evening carried melodies and harmonies that shaped the day. Work, study, and personal time were enriched by the presence of music, making every moment more vibrant and meaningful. The young person's emotional world became more nuanced and balanced. Influenced by the timeless lessons embedded in the compositions they loved, music was no longer a background element. It was a living, breathing companion, guiding, inspiring, comforting. The young person also began to experiment with sharing music in a more intentional way. They invited friends to listen together, creating quiet spaces for reflection and discussion. They explained the stories behind compositions, the emotions conveyed through the instruments, and the impact each piece could have on mood and thought. Slowly, a small community of listeners formed, people who appreciated the transformative power of music. These shared experiences strengthened relationships, built empathy, and created moments of collective calm and understanding. By the end of this period, the young person had fully entered a new phase of life, guided by classical music. It had become a teacher, a friend, and a source as their love for classical music deepened. The young person realized that their journey had grown beyond simple appreciation. They now wanted to create something more personal, a collection that could bring calm, inspiration, and reflection to anyone who listened. This idea came not just from passion, but from a desire to share the profound peace and emotional richness that had transformed their own life. They envisioned a compilation of timeless masterpieces, each piece chosen for its ability to touch the heart and evoke meaningful emotions. The first step was careful selection. They began listening to countless recordings, searching for pieces that spoke to different moods and moments. Mornings might be filled with soft, gentle piano compositions, evoking freshness and clarity. Afternoons could carry more dynamic orchestral works, bringing energy and focus. Evenings were reserved for reflective, calming music that helped unwind the mind after a busy day. Each choice required thoughtful consideration, as the goal was not just variety, but harmony, a journey that would flow naturally from one piece to the next. As they explored, they learned that interpretation mattered as much as the composition itself. Different orchestras, soloists, and conductors brought unique qualities to the same piece. A symphony performed by one orchestra might feel bright and joyous, while another rendition could emphasize depth and melancholy. Piano works could be delicate or forceful, slow or lively, each variation evoking a different emotional landscape. This realization added a new dimension to their listening, requiring patience and careful attention to detail. It was no longer enough to hear the notes. They had to feel the intention behind each performance. Alongside the selection process, the young person began researching the composers and their lives. Each story revealed struggles, triumphs, and human emotions embedded in the music. Beethoven's resilience in the face of deafness, Mozart's playful genius and relentless creativity, Chopin's sensitive expression, and Debussy's dreamlike imagination all became integral to understanding the music. Knowing the history and context behind a piece transformed it from sound into a living story, allowing them to connect more deeply with the emotions it conveyed. They also paid attention to the technical aspects of creating a collection. Recording quality, clarity of instruments, and sound balance were all important. Listening in different environments helped them understand how music might be experienced by others. In quiet rooms, soft passages became vivid, while louder sections carried warmth and depth. Outdoor listening revealed nuances of rhythm and harmony against natural sounds. Every decision in assembling the collection was deliberate, aimed at creating a journey that would engage the listener fully. Emotionally and intellectually, the young person experimented with the order of the pieces, crafting sequences that told a story. One sequence began with a gentle piano sonata, evoking the calm of early morning, moved through lively string movements that inspired energy and focus, and concluded with soft, reflective nocturnes that invited rest and contemplation. Another sequence focused on emotions, joy, longing, and finally serenity. They discovered that the flow of a collection could influence mood, guiding the listener through a thoughtful, immersive experience. While curating, they also reflected on the power of silence within music. Pauses, rests, and quiet moments were not empty spaces, but essential elements that allowed the listener to breathe and feel. Silence gave music room to resonate within the mind, making each note more impactful. This insight influenced how they arranged pieces and even guided listening experiences, creating moments where the mind could rest and absorb the beauty fully. Sharing the music became a rewarding part of the process. Friends and family were invited to listen, experiencing the collection in carefully prepared environments with soft lighting and comfortable seating. Conversations followed, exploring the feelings and images the music inspired. The young person realized that music was a bridge connecting people, sparking dialogue and creating shared emotional experiences. Observing the calm and joy it brought to others reinforced the purpose of the collection. Deepening their commitment to it, they also began to explore lesser-known works, discovering compositions that were rarely performed or recorded. These hidden gems carried a freshness and surprise, adding diversity and richness to the collection. Each discovery felt like uncovering a secret, and the young person felt a sense of responsibility to bring these treasures to life for others. They learned that the beauty of music was not limited to what was famous or popular. True artistry existed in many corners, waiting to be discovered. As the collection grew, the young person experimented with creating themed playlists. Some were designed for relaxation, others for focus, reflection, or emotional release. They carefully considered how each piece would interact with the next, creating journeys that could be experienced in a single sitting or spread across days. The process was both creative and meditative, teaching them patience, attention to detail, and an appreciation for subtlety and nuance. Listening to and curating music also affected their personal growth. Patience, empathy, and mindfulness became natural outcomes of engaging deeply with the art form. They noticed a greater sensitivity to emotions, both their own and others, and a deeper understanding of the complexity of human experience. Music became a teacher, guiding them to live more thoughtfully, respond to challenges with calm, and appreciate the beauty in ordinary moments. They started documenting the process, keeping notes on each composition, its emotional effect, and the reasons for including it in the collection. Over time, these notes became a personal guide, reflecting the evolution of taste, understanding, and emotional insight. Reviewing these notes reminded the young person of the journey they had undertaken, highlighting the growth that music had inspired. The collection was no longer just music. It was a record of exploration, discovery, and personal transformation. The young person also experimented with creating immersive listening experiences. They paired music with ambient lighting, natural sounds, or simple visual imagery. The goal was to enhance the emotional journey, making each listening session a fully engaging experience. Music became a form of meditation, guiding attention, emotions, and thoughts with care and precision. Each session was an opportunity to explore the depth of feeling that a single note or phrase could evoke. Through this process, they realized that the collection was not static. It would continue to evolve. New discoveries, changing moods, and deeper understanding would add layers to it over time. The process of curating became a lifelong practice, offering continuous opportunities for growth, reflection, and emotional connection. The young person felt gratitude for the way music had transformed their life, a strong desire to share this gift with others. They also began reflecting on the broader impact of music. It was not just a personal experience, but a cultural and emotional bridge. Compositions created centuries ago could still resonate today, connecting people across time and space. Music could soothe, inspire, and uplift, and the young person felt privileged to participate in this ongoing dialogue of human expression. The collection they were creating was a small contribution to this larger conversation, a way to offer calm, reflection, and beauty to anyone willing to listen. As the project progressed, they experimented with presenting the collection in different formats. Digital playlists, carefully designed sequences for home listening, and even recordings with brief introductions to the compositions allowed others to engage deeply with the music. Feedback from listeners was encouraging, reinforcing the idea that sharing music could bring tangible joy and emotional comfort. The young person felt a growing sense of purpose, realizing that their passion could have a meaningful impact on the lives of others. Every day brought new discoveries and insights. The young person continued exploring, listening, and curating, finding joy in the process as much as in the result. Each piece added depth and variety to the collection, while the act of selection and organization strengthened their understanding of music, emotion, and human experience. The journey of creating a collection became a journey of self-discovery, reflection, and growth, as music continued to shape the way they saw and experienced the world. Through this work, they also developed a deeper appreciation for the subtlety of emotion in music. Simple melodies could convey profound feelings, and complex compositions could carry intricate layers of meaning. They learned to listen attentively, noticing small details, shifts in dynamics, and expressive nuances. This attentiveness spilled over into other areas of life, fostering mindfulness, patience, and a deeper connection to the present moment. Music had become a lens through which they experienced the world more fully and meaningfully. By the end of this period, the young person had established a strong foundation for the collection. It was no longer just a personal project. It was a living, evolving work that reflected their passion, understanding, and emotional journey. The process had taught them about the transformative power of music, the depth of human creativity, and the importance of sharing experiences with others. The collection was a bridge connecting the past and present. Personal growth and communal experience, quiet reflection, and emotional expression. Music had become more than sound. It had become a guiding force, shaping life, inspiring thought, and creating moments of beauty and peace. As the collection grew, the young person began to notice how much impact it could have on others. Friends, family, and even casual listeners responded with surprise and appreciation. Some spoke about how the music helped them relax after long, stressful days. Others shared that it inspired memories or feelings they hadn't experienced for years. Listening to these reactions, the young person realized that their collection was not only a personal journey, but also a gift, capable of touching the lives of many people. They started sharing the music more intentionally. Small listening sessions were organized at home, where a few friends would gather and experience the pieces in quiet and comfort. The lights were dimmed, and soft cushions and chairs made the space inviting. The music began gently, and as it progressed, the listeners could feel themselves carried along with its emotions. Conversations after the sessions were heartfelt, exploring the images, memories, and emotions that arose from the melodies. The young person felt joy and satisfaction seeing how deeply the music affected others. Realizing that what had once been personal solace could now become shared comfort. Encouraged by these experiences, they decided to reach a broader audience. They started sharing the collection online, making thoughtful playlists and carefully curated recommendations. People from different places responded positively, often commenting on how the music had helped them focus, reflect, or simply enjoy quiet moments in their day. Stories poured in about the calming influence of the compositions, the way a particular piece could ease anxiety or bring clarity during challenging times. Witnessing these responses strengthened the young person's sense of purpose, confirming that their work was meaningful and valuable. The young person also noticed how music could connect generations. During one visit to a local community center, they played pieces from their collection for a mixed group of young and older listeners. The room was quiet, filled with attentive faces. As the music played, smiles appeared, and gentle nods accompanied the rhythm. The older listeners shared memories associated with certain compositions, while younger listeners discovered sounds that were new to them. Conversations flowed, crossing age gaps and experiences, creating a sense of shared understanding and connection. The young person marveled at how music, simple yet profound, could build bridges across time and experience. Their exploration did not stop at just sharing and listening. They began studying more about musical techniques, orchestration, and interpretation. Understanding the construction of compositions deepened their appreciation, allowing them to notice subtle shifts in tone, unexpected harmonies, or the emotional weight carried by a particular instrument. Learning about these details made listening more engaging and dynamic, turning every session into an educational journey. As well as an emotional experience, music also began to influence their perspective on life. They realized that just as compositions could have movements, pauses, and varying tempos, life itself had similar rhythms. There were moments of activity, moments of quiet reflection, and moments of transition. Recognizing this, the young person approached daily challenges with patience, understanding that every period of difficulty or calm had its purpose. Music had taught them balance and presence, and these lessons naturally extended into their interactions, decisions, and personal growth. They started organizing small events in their town, inviting people to experience the music in communal spaces. Local libraries, quiet cafes, and small halls became venues for intimate listening gatherings. Each event was carefully planned, with attention to acoustics, lighting, and comfort. Participants were encouraged to close their eyes, focus on the music, and share feelings afterward. The responses were overwhelmingly positive. People spoke about feeling lightness, clarity, or deep relaxation. Some shared personal stories, connecting their experiences to the emotions in the music. The young person was inspired, realizing that their collection had the power to create meaningful, human connections. This recognition led to a broader vision. They wanted to expand the reach of classical music, highlighting not only famous works, but also lesser-known compositions that carried emotional depth and beauty. Researching old scores, listening to rare recordings, and discovering hidden gems became part of their daily routine. Each new piece brought freshness to the collection, adding layers of complexity and emotion. The young person was careful to choose works that would fit the overall purpose, to inspire, comfort, and evoke meaningful reflection, alongside curating. They also developed an interest in the stories behind the compositions. Composers' lives, the historical contexts in which they worked, and the personal emotions expressed through their music became subjects of fascination. They learned that Beethoven's symphonies carried messages of resilience. Mozart's works expressed joy and creativity, and Debussy's compositions captured dreamlike imagination. Sharing these stories alongside the music added depth to the listening experience, allowing audiences to connect emotionally as well as intellectually. The young person noticed that their own emotional intelligence was improving. Listening to complex emotions expressed through music helped them understand feelings more clearly, both their own and others. They became more empathetic, patient, and aware, noticing subtleties in conversations and relationships. Music had taught them to pay attention, to feel deeply, and to respond with care and understanding. This transformation extended into all areas of life, enriching personal relationships and creating a more harmonious daily experience. The collection became more than just music. It became a tool for emotional guidance. They curated sequences for different purposes: relaxation, focus, creativity, and reflection. Each playlist was designed to accompany life's moments, from early morning routines to quiet evenings. Sharing these curated experiences reinforced the idea that music could shape mood, inspire thought, and create meaningful emotional journeys. Listeners reported feeling calmer, more focused, or more reflective. And these responses motivated the young person to continue refining and expanding the collection with experience. They began to mentor others who wanted to explore classical music. Friends and acquaintances, curious about the emotional depth and timeless qualities of the works, sought guidance. The young person shared listening techniques, interpretation methods, and suggestions for creating personal collections. They emphasized that there was no single way to experience music. Each listener's journey was unique. This mentorship was rewarding, as they saw others discovering the same calm and inspiration that had shaped their own life. They also explored collaborations with local musicians and small ensembles. By inviting live performances, they enhanced the experience of their collection, creating dynamic interactions between recorded and live music. These events drew small but enthusiastic audiences, fostering a sense of community around shared appreciation for classical music. The young person noticed that the communal experience deepened the impact of the compositions, allowing listeners to connect not only with the music, but also with one another. Over time, the young person reflected on the larger significance of the work. They realized that the collection was more than a personal hobby or a community project. It was part of a cultural legacy. Classical music, composed centuries ago, remained relevant and transformative. Its timeless quality had the power to shape emotions, inspire creativity, and foster connections. Recognizing this responsibility, they continued to approach the project with care, respect, and dedication, aiming to honor both the music and the listeners. Every day brought new discoveries. They explored different interpretations, listened to recordings from different countries and periods, experimented with blending traditional works with rare compositions. Each edition enriched the collection, providing new perspectives and emotional experiences. The young person also encouraged listeners to engage actively, to reflect, imagine, and connect their own lives to the music. This interactive approach created a sense of personal ownership and intimacy, making the collection meaningful on a deeply individual level. The emotional impact of the music became evident in many ways. People described feeling lighter, calmer, and more present. Some shared that they could finally find quiet moments amidst busy days, while others reported gaining insights into personal challenges. The young person realized that the collection had become a source of emotional support, a safe space for reflection and healing. It was not just a compilation of notes and melodies. It was a living guide to human emotion, offering comfort, inspiration, and clarity. In reflecting on these experiences, the young person understood that their journey was ongoing. There would always be new compositions to discover, new interpretations to explore, and new listeners to reach. Music was a living art form, constantly evolving, and they were part of that evolution. Each day offered opportunities for growth, discovery, and sharing, reinforcing the idea that classical music was not just an art, but a way of connecting with life, emotions, and community. By the end of this period, the young person had grown in confidence, understanding, and purpose. The collection was no longer simply a personal project. It was a bridge connecting people, emotions, and generations. It was a living testament to the transformative power of music, demonstrating how timeless masterpieces could inspire, soothe, and unite. Through their dedication, the young person had discovered not only the beauty of classical music but also its profound ability to touch lives, shape perspectives, and create meaningful human connections. Over time, the young person began to see that their collection of classical music had grown into something much larger than they had originally imagined. It was no longer just a personal refuge or a shared hobby. It had become a way to connect people, inspire creativity, and create calm and reflection in daily life. The joy of seeing others experience the same emotions and insights they had discovered fueled their desire to expand and refine the collection even further. They began exploring music from different eras and countries, discovering pieces that were rarely performed or known. Each new composition brought fresh textures, harmonies, and emotions. From the delicate piano works of early composers to the complex symphonies of the late Romantic era, and even the Impressionist pieces that painted dreamy soundscapes, every addition enriched the collection. The young person paid attention to how each piece made them feel, considering which emotions it could evoke in others, and carefully placed it in sequences that would create a meaningful journey in the process. They also began to reflect on the deeper lessons that music offered. Every note, every pause, every dynamic change carried subtle messages about life, emotion, and humanity. Music had taught them patience, empathy, and mindfulness. It had helped them navigate stress, understand their feelings, and connect with the feelings of others. They realized that these lessons were as important as the music itself, forming a framework for living with awareness, presence, and emotional balance. Sharing the collection became a deliberate effort. The young person hosted listening sessions at community spaces, schools, and libraries, inviting people from different walks of life. Some were familiar with classical music, others were hearing certain pieces for the first time. Each session was designed to guide the listener through a journey, starting with calm and gentle melodies, moving through energetic and uplifting compositions, and ending with reflective and soothing pieces. The response was consistently positive, with people reporting feelings of calm, inspiration, and emotional release. Some even described the experience as transformative, opening new ways to perceive the world around them. The young person also discovered that music could bridge gaps between cultures and generations. In one session, older participants shared memories of hearing certain pieces on radios or in concerts decades ago, while younger listeners discovered sounds and styles that were new to them. Conversations flowed about the emotions, memories, and imagery that each piece evoked. The room became a shared space of understanding, where music served as a universal language connecting people who might otherwise have little in common. The young person felt a profound sense of fulfillment seeing this connection take place. They continued to study the stories behind the compositions, learning about the lives of the composers and the circumstances under which the music was created. Beethoven's resilience, Chopin's sensitivity, Debussy's imagination, and many other composers' unique experiences added depth to the listening experience. Sharing these stories alongside the music helped listeners understand the emotional and historical context. Creating a richer, more immersive experience, the young person realized that the combination of music and story created a powerful way to touch hearts and minds. As the collection grew, the young person also experimented with different ways to present it. They created thematic playlists, digital collections, and carefully structured listening guides. Each format was designed to enhance the listener's experience, whether at home, during a walk, or in a quiet room dedicated to reflection. They also explored integrating subtle visual or natural elements, such as soft lighting or gentle background sounds, to create immersive environments. The goal was always to encourage deep engagement and emotional resonance. Throughout this journey, the young person noticed how music influenced their own life in new ways. They became more patient, attentive, and emotionally aware. Difficult situations were approached with calm and clarity, inspired by the lessons learned from listening and studying music. Daily routines, from morning walks to evening reflections, were enriched by melodies that framed the day and guided their mood. Music had become more than entertainment. It was a teacher, a companion, and a source of emotional guidance. They also began encouraging others to explore music in their own way. Friends, family, and community members were invited to select their favorite pieces, create their own sequences, or simply spend time listening mindfully. The young person emphasized that there was no right or wrong way to experience music. Every journey was personal. By fostering this openness, they helped others discover the joy, calm, and insight that music could offer. Seeing people develop their own connections to the compositions reinforced the young person's belief in the transformative power of music. The collection continued to evolve, incorporating new discoveries, rare compositions, and varied interpretations. The young person found joy in the process of listening, learning, and organizing, treating the collection as a living work rather than a static project. Each piece was chosen with care, considering its emotional impact and how it fit into the larger journey of the collection. They discovered that the act of curating itself was meditative, requiring attention, patience, and creativity, and offering its own form of emotional fulfillment. The young person also realized that their work had an impact. Beyond personal enjoyment or small community sessions, online audiences began responding to shared playlists and guides, describing moments of reflection, relaxation, and inspiration. Stories arrived from people who used the music to focus at work, calm themselves before sleep, or explore their emotions during quiet moments. Witnessing this ripple effect reinforced the idea that music could provide comfort, clarity, and beauty in countless lives. Through this ongoing process, they became increasingly aware of the timeless nature of classical music. Compositions created centuries ago continued to resonate, proving that art could transcend time and culture. The young person felt humbled and inspired by this legacy, understanding that they were participating in a chain of human expression and emotion. Sharing the collection was their way of contributing to this living tradition, offering others a chance to experience the same emotional depth and insight that had enriched their own life. They also reflected on how music had transformed their perception of everyday life. Simple moments, watching a sunset, walking in a quiet park, or listening to rain were now enhanced by the emotional language they had learned from music. They noticed patterns, rhythms, and harmonies in the world around them, feeling a deep connection to nature, people, and time itself. Music had opened their awareness, teaching them to notice and appreciate beauty in the ordinary, and to respond with empathy, patience, and gratitude. As the collection reached a mature stage, the young person began thinking about its legacy. They wanted it to be accessible, meaningful, and enduring. Every choice of composition, sequence, and presentation was made with care. Considering how it could affect listeners today and in the future, they realized that the collection was more than a personal or communal project. It was a contribution to the timeless dialogue of music, a way to preserve and share emotional and artistic experiences across generations. The young person also discovered the joy of collaboration. Working with local musicians, recording specialists, and educators added new dimensions to the collection. Live performances, workshops, and guided listening sessions allowed audiences to engage more deeply with the music. These experiences highlighted the communal and cultural significance of classical music, reinforcing the young person's sense of purpose and commitment. Throughout this journey, they remained mindful of the lessons music had taught them. Patience, attention to detail, emotional awareness, and empathy were not just skills for listening, they were tools for living. Every day brought opportunities to apply these lessons, to engage more deeply with people, nature, and life itself. The collection was both a source and a reflection of these principles, embodying the harmony depth. in beauty that music had instilled by the end of this chapter in their life. The young person had achieved a profound understanding of classical music's power and significance. The collection was no longer just a set of compositions. It was a living guide, offering emotional support, inspiration, and connection. It had transformed their life and the lives of others, creating spaces for calm, reflection, and shared experience. Through dedication, curiosity, and passion, they had built something timeless, a collection that could touch hearts, nurture the soul, and remind everyone who listened of the beauty, depth, and enduring power of music.